Welcome to the GameReady podcast, where former college and pro athletes share their stories, experiences, and the lessons that shape them on and off the field. From the highs of competition to the challenges of transition, we dive into mindset, resilience, and success beyond sports. Whether you're an athlete, coach, or fan of the game, this is your place to connect, learn, and get game ready for life. Let's get game ready.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the GameReady podcast with Coach Ernest Allen. I have a special guest today, Danielle Vallas.
Vallas. Yeah, you're good.
Danielle Vallas. I didn't want to mispronounce her name. Danielle she's one of the guests that I've really been looking forward to, and I've been actually talking about her to my other guests that I've worked with, that I've actually talked to previously. Danielle is a licensed mental health counselor. She specializes in working with athletes in a private practice, which is huge. She's a former college athlete, played lacrosse and ice hockey at the college level. An experienced coach, coached multiple high school teams, bringing firsthand knowledge of athletic development. She's the president of D&G Wellness Consulting, providing training, coaching, and professional development to corporations, schools, and athletic teams on a variety of wellness topics. She's the author, publisher, and of An Athlete's Guide to Mental Health, which we're going to talk about, and I'm going to let her talk more about in depth, offering insight tools to athletic experience to improve mental wellness in sports. She's the founder of Buffalo Believes, owns a wellness clothing company celebrating the city of Buffalo and advocating for mental health awareness. University professor, teaches graduates courses at University of Buffalo in mental health counseling. Certified trauma informed yoga mindfulness teacher, integrated mindfulness, wellness, and movement, which integrates mindfulness and movement into wellness strategies. And she's a wellness coach, expertise, holds a wellness coaching certification from Cornell University, and has over 20 years experience in health and wellness. She has extensive educational background, extremely qualified to talk on this subject that we're going to talk about today, which is the core of this podcast, which is athletes transition from college sports to regular life, which the mental health aspect is really the reason why I dedicated this podcast to that. Okay, then I'll let you go ahead and talk.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that introduction. I know it's a mouthful. Health and wellness has just really been something I've been so passionate about since my undergrad years, being an athlete too. So it's really interesting how my athletic career turned into a wellness career and now specializing in athletes. So it's just really interesting how it all kind of fell together. And it's just something that I, live, breathe, and can talk about for hours and hours. So I'm just thrilled to be here today. I love the work that you're doing about that transition, right? I think that's something that we don't focus on. We focus on our athletes of like the here and the now and the winning and the points and the score, but we're not thinking about it's going to end someday. And what is that going to be like for those athletes once it's over, and what that transition is. And we do a lot of work. I do a lot of work one-on-one with athletes, but also when I work with athletic teams, we work with high school teams and college teams. And one of our modules is all about identity outside of your sport, right? And how do you form an identity outside of your sport? So your sport is a piece of you, not all of you, because it will end. And not to sound so sad it's going to end, but, how do we take the good that we've learned from athletics and use it for the next stage of life?
When you play sports past a certain point, they're invaluable.
Mm-hmm.
In your early developmental years as an adult. That's what I call ages 18 to 25.
Yep.
Those are your developmental years as an adult, where you learn how to pretty much be an adult.
Yep.
Because you really, there's no other way to put it. You're legally an adult at 18, mm-hmm. and the first five to 6 years of your 20s, you're learning how to navigate adult life.
Yeah.
Which being an athlete is a totally different.
100%. So what's interesting about that age period, 18 to 25, is we know that between a little bit earlier, about 12 to 25, is where we learn our coping skills, like learn how to deal with stress, how to deal with big emotions. And what we learn during that time is so pivotal to how we deal as an adult. If you think about how you deal with stress and challenges now, probably is the same way you did when you were a younger person. So when we work with athletes, we think about, okay, like athletics, sports, fitness, movement can be a great coping skill, but it can't be the only coping skill for our athletes because, again, someday they're not going to have their team. Maybe they're going to have physical injury. Maybe their bodies are just going to age, and they're not going to be able to go out for that long run to cope with their stress, or they're not going to be able to shoot go out and shoot a bunch of basketball foul shots to get their stress out. So I think we have to also think of our athletes during the developmental years of life after sports, and part of that is learning how to cope with those emotions. And when athletes transition from being an athlete to a non-athlete, I'll call it, or a in that realm, how do they cope? How do they deal? How do they function? Right? And those coping skills are a huge part. I work with tons of former college athletes in my practice who say, Danielle, I don't know how to make friends. My best friends were always my teammates, right? I had built-in best friends from the time I was 5 years old starting my sport until I graduated from undergrad at 22. How do I make friends? How do I time management? How do I eat? How do I move my body? My coach always told me we have team dinner at this time. We have practice. We have weight room. We have video. I don't know how to structure my day. I don't know how to exercise in a way that feels good to my body that's not sports performance related. And so I think it's all of those transitions and that, as a mental health provider, unfortunately, I think that transition is so tough for many people and they don't have those coping skills. And then they fall into substance, they fall into gambling, they fall into eating disorders, they fall into toxic relationships because they don't know how to cope. And so I think really this prevention, early intervention, and the importance of this conversation today is making sure we're talking to our athletes, high school, middle school even, to say, hey, who are you other than just being an athlete, right? How else can you cope with those big emotions besides your sport? Do you have friends outside of your sports? Do you have hobbies outside of your sport, right? So because when that transition happens, we want them to have a toolbox to make that transition as smooth as possible. And hopefully that will help prevent potentially some of that onset of some mental health disorders. Mm-hmm.
Stuck to it. He's like, make friends off the team.
Yep.
He told me, he's like, make as many friends as you can off the team so you have a life outside of this.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a little bit detrimental after I got done playing. So that's very, very important.
Mm-hmm.
What we're gonna look at your college athletic experience and dive into how it actually helped you create this amazing career where you're actually helping athletes transition.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Looking back at your college athletic career, what were some of the most defining moments, both highs and lows, that shaped not only you as an athlete, but you as a person?
Mm-hmm. I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is my first day of college. I happened to meet my three best friends who also were on the lacrosse team. We happened to live on the same floor, and we went outside and we just started passing the ball around. It was just the beginning of a beautiful friendship. They too were, on the team. So they were girls that would get up early and we go to breakfast and we go to class and we go to the library and then we'd go to the gym or we go for a run. And so I think that was really instrumental of me joining a new community, a new school, a new place where I didn't really know anybody, to say, okay, here are three girls that are doing the same thing, have similar goals as athletes and as academics. That really, really helped. So I would, really give them a lot of credit to any success that I had as a human and as an athlete in college, because they were just my great support system from day one. So that was I was really, really fortunate in that way. So that would be a high. I think a low would be, I ended up only playing college lacrosse for 2 years because I had to make a tough decision because I was doing too many things at school. I was an athlete. I was a student leader. I created my own major. I wanted to do internships, and I'm someone who just wants to do it all. And unfortunately, there's only 24 hours in a day. So I had to make a tough choice. And that was really difficult after that second year of playing to say, like, what do I want to do? And, I went back and forth. And I had decided, I think it's time that I step away from being the collegiate athlete so I could do an internship. I wanted to go be an EMT at that time. I knew I wanted to do something in health and wellness, wasn't exactly sure. And there was a conflict of the time. There wasn't enough time. So that was I don't know if that was a low, but that was definitely a huge challenge to learn to quit something. I think as athletes, we are told you can't quit. We're not quitters. We're not quitters. We're not quitters. But I think it's important to say that it's okay to quit. Quitting is not a bad thing. It's redirection into something else. And everything's going to end. So instead of saying I'm quitting and I'm a failure, or I'm quitting and I'm weak or I can handle it, I want people to look at quitting as like, if there's just something else out there for me, right? Really to reframe that, because with the word quit, and especially in athletics, there's a lot of shame that comes along with that, right? And then it's just, we get really down on ourselves. And again, that can lead to other mental health struggles like depression, low self-esteem, low self-worth. And so I think, for me, I definitely struggled with it. I definitely struggled with this, like, I've worked so hard to be here. I grew up playing sports. I grew up in a sports household. Like, is this embarrassing if I quit? Luckily for me, I had a phenomenal coach who said to me, Danielle, I get it. She's like, I really think your skill set is going to be coaching. What this local high school is looking for a varsity girls lacrosse coach. It's a lot less of a commitment than playing at school. Would you be interested? And I said, yeah, heck yes. And it really, when I was quitting, I did not quit to coach, but that coaching opportunity, quitting opened up the door for that coaching opportunity. So I really started my coaching, experiences at age 20, and I coached for over 2 decades of high school sports. And so again, sometimes quitting, you think, oh, this is the end, but it's at the beginning. And so for me, as hard as it was to make that decision, and that would probably be a low point, a challenge for me, really opened the door for me to coach, which then opened the door to be a therapist, which then opened the door to do all of the work that I'm doing now with athletes. So I think that's a good lesson. You just don't know what's going to come. Like, you have to kind of trust that there's a plan, trust, whatever that you believe in, that sometimes things that seem like the end are actually a new beginning.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I didn't know that then, Ernest. Like, I wasn't. This is years of maybe some wisdom, but I wasn't totally aware of that at 20 years old.
Yeah, but the cool thing is, hopefully, this conversation can be shared, and it can reach a 18, 19, 20-year-old, and they can give them just put a bug in their ear so they have an idea of how to handle it.
Absolutely.
It sounds like those experiences really prepared you for life after sports, would you say?
Absolutely. I think, again, learning how to roll a little bit better with transitions, kind of, again, trusting that there's a plan. I think that helped. I think one thing that really helped me as an athlete with life after being an athlete is, I don't want to call it work ethic, but like having sort of a goal and learning what goes into reaching those goals, right? Things, I always say, opportunities just don't really fall on your lap. You have to create them. The harder what do they say? The harder you work, the luckier you get. And I think that really, I learned that in athletics. To this day, I've never worked just a 9-to-5 job, because I think as an athlete, I never learned to do that, right? On the weekends, you're training, you're traveling, you're playing as a coach, you're traveling, you're training, practice, this, that, the other thing. And I think that's really built, and I live that way to this day. And people say, why do you work as much as you do? And I said, well, it's not work. First of all, I love it. Like, I'm so bad. It doesn't feel like work, but I just am wired to keep hustling. And I really think that is directly connected to my years as an athlete. So that's something I think is so special about athletics and growing up as an athlete that really has shaped my life today. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Actually, being in athletics helped me make this choice to have my current career, because I couldn't see myself, selling pharmaceuticals or
Right. Yep.
or doing something outside of something that I could actually help somebody become more physically active and improve their health performance.
Yeah. Which I think which is cool, right? To say, like, as an athlete, yes, like your role as like an athlete might change, right? You might become a trainer, you might become a performance coach, a mental health counselor, especially as an athlete, a consultant, physical. There's so many different realms of staying involved in athletics versus just being the athlete, right? And so I think that's important. So if athletics, being part of a team, part of this world, is your passion, there's ways to do it, right? It's not black and white. You just have to find what's going to fit, I think, with each stage of life.
That's one thing I do miss. I do miss being a part of a team.
Mm-hmm.
That's a huge. That was something I really enjoyed, and it's hard to develop a new team.
Yeah,
So,
definitely.
but the thing is that I wanted to actually have this community so people can learn how to develop
Yep.
themselves.
Yep. It's
Transition. Oh, go ahead.
interesting. You talk about that team aspect, and so my company D&G Wellness, as I was saying, we work with high school and college teams and coaches, and we go in and present 4 different modules about mental health and athletics. And what makes, I think, our program really unique is I go in as a former athlete, but also as a wellness expert and mental health counselor. But I'm not cool, right? My collegiate years were way back in the day, so I bring in former athletes to share their personal stories. And what's really cool is the athletes we work with hear from kids. I'll call them kids. They're not kids, but they're in their early 20s, in their 20s, telling about their struggles that they've had or what they wish they would have known. And not only is it wonderful for the athletes to hear these stories, but it's great for my team. My team kind of becomes a team, right? They have become this great friendship. They lean on each other. They share stories, learning that they're not alone. And so I feel very fortunate that I'm able to kind of provide that platform for them. But you do bring up a good point. When you've been part of a team for your entire life and then your career's over, we miss that. We miss that community. We miss that camaraderie, that shared experiences. And so I think, even opportunities like being here chatting with you today or people listening today to say like, oh, I'm not alone. There's people out there. How do we form this community is so important because that social aspect is part of wellness. Right. Their social wellness is a huge part of our well-being. And as an athlete, we just get that because we're part of a team. Yeah. But as you transition, where do you find that team? Do you find that team at the gym? Do you find that team at your workplace? Do you find that team in your community? A yoga class? We're all searching for that belonging, that togetherness. And unfortunately, I think as adults, as we, in our more in traditional careers, it's sometimes it's more challenging to find that. And people struggle and people are lonely, and that then can lead to some mental health struggles. Mm-hmm.
Sports team, having a team inside the workplace, with people who don't have the same type of mindset as an athlete, it can be very, very taxing and very trying. Basically, one thing I understand, the transition from being a college athlete to life beyond sports is a major shift. Mm-hmm. What was the biggest challenge you faced in that transition, whether it be your identity, your career, your fitness, your mental health? What was the biggest challenge?
I would say that's tough. I mean, I in some parts I feel very fortunate that it kind of just evolved to where I am today. I'd say one challenge would say kind of the fitness piece of it all. So post-college, I did what a lot of young people do. They start running, right? I feel like it's like the midlife crisis, the quarter life crisis is to run a marathon, right? You look at, right? I think that happens quite a bit to people, right? This like I was an athlete and now what do I do with myself? I need a goal. So we start running. So fortunately for me, I did reach that goal, which was great. But years of athletics and running, wear and tear on my body, I actually had a full hip replacement in my early 30s, which is very, very unusual. And it was just years of overuse. And so I think a big transition for me was learning to listen to my body and learning to move my body in different ways that makes me feel good. And learning to say, like, it doesn't need to be running miles upon miles or, extreme workouts. I can find a relationship with my body through yoga, through mindfulness, through meditation, through walking, through Pilates, through different forms of movement. And so I think that was a big transition for me and learning again, like to listen to my body. I mean, at my early 30s to say, I could barely walk, and everyone said, what is this? And my doctor says, I think it's just years of overuse, and probably some bad genetics too, honestly. And that was a big eye opener of like, okay, my body, I want my body to last a long time, right? I want my body to carry me throughout my life until I'm very, very old. And in order to do that, I need to re-look at how I'm taking care of it.
Mm-hmm. In this industry. So I played beyond college. And one thing that I understood, I know my body was going to change by the time I got 50. I'll be 52 in 2 weeks.
Oh, so, happy birthday.
Thank you. So I specifically and somewhat strategically got into this industry so I can understand the human body and understand why things were, starting to change and
yep.
could do to actually make that adjustment as smooth. That's one of the main things.
Yeah.
Everything physical goes into mental, and everything mental goes into physical.
Absolutely. I think just having that relationship with your body, I always say that your body is the only body you're ever going to have. And so if we're not treating it well, what are we going to do? Right. We don't get to trade it in and get a new version. This is the one we're going to carry that carries with us our whole lives. And so learning how to take care of it, if it's through nutrition, if it's through movement, if it's through sleep, if it's through rest, whatever that is. And moving your body in a way that feels good, that's fun, because that's going to obviously help you continue those behaviors, those routines is really important. And meeting your body where it is, right? I think through injury, that can be really tough to say, hey, I used to be able to do this, but now I'm recovering from injury and I can barely do anything. And so how do you have compassion for your body and treat your body with kindness so it can recover and it has a new normal moving forward?
Yeah. That is a gift. That's a gift to be able to do.
Mm-hmm. And I don't know if you, in your experiences too, working with athletes physically too, like the mental health stuff that comes with injury, right? I think we often overlook sometimes when an athlete's injured, we look at the physical rehab, but what are we doing about the mental rehab? Are they in the right mindset to come back to the field? If it's, even if it's an invisible injury, like a mental health disorder or an eating disorder or a concussion, something that we can't see, are we taking care of the mental health aspects of returning to sport? And a lot of times that comes with anxiety and fear of getting re-injured. And we know when we play scared or when our body's on that high alert like that, injuries much higher, re-injuries much higher rates. And so I think, we think about injury and aging and all this stuff, we have to think about where's the mind-body connection and how does that play a part in all of it?
I mean, the mental aspect of the healing process after injury is just as important as the physical aspect.
Yep.
There's no other way I can put it. I mean, I've had several surgeries where imperative, and I was a little different. I would, any surgically repaired area, I would try to push it and break it again.
Oh wow! Really?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I would try to see if the repair stood up.
Right.
Because I wanted to trust it. I wanted to.
Yep.
Trust
oh, okay. Interesting. Yeah.
My body was able to actually withstand the stress that it had before. I mean, I'm not saying that's the smartest thing, but it for my ability to trust my body, it helped me. So, I mean, one thing
that's definitely an interesting approach, right? If it works for you, that works for you. I think what it is, it's coming, I don't know how to say, getting yourself reacquainted with the new body after surgery and saying, okay, where am I? What can I handle? How can I listen to it? When do I know if I'm pushing too hard or not enough? It's trust. It's learning how to trust your body. And there's often after injury, there's a lot of grief that goes on. There's literally grief that's happening of the loss of your former body.
Yes.
And helping athletes work through that and say that's okay to have grief, but it's also okay to move forward too. And how do we get them to move forward in the right headspace? So they can feel well mentally. That's going to also help them heal and progress to the next chapter.
What advice would you give another athlete going through that same process from transitioning? What would you give them? Or you give it to them every day? It seems like.
Yeah. How much time do we have?
Yeah.
No. I think a lot of it would be have fun with sports, right? Have fun in your athletic career. It's not going to last forever, right? And so we also know that when you are having fun, you're going to perform better, right? When you're taking care of yourself, you're going to perform better. When you're part of the community, when you're part of that team culture that's positive, you're going to have more success. I would also say, I don't know about you. I don't remember all the wins and the losses. I remember the relationships. I remember the community. I remember the lessons. And, looking at that part of athletics and really focusing on that. So I would tell someone like this is a part of your life. If it's a chapter, have the best time you can have, be as successful as you can be, but also start thinking about life outside of sports. Who are you other than an athlete, right? This is this idea of life, there's a lot of life left. And so what brings you joy outside of sports? What are you excited about? What are you passionate about? What do you want to read about? What do you want to learn about? And if it's only sports, I'm going to encourage them to say, let's go back to life before you were a serious athlete. What did you like to do when you were like a younger child? And I often hear athletes, I love Lego. I'm like, well, where are your Legos? Oh, I don't have time for Legos. Well, sure you do. You got to make some time for the Legos. Or I used to love climbing trees and being out in nature. Well, we need to do that now as an athlete, right? We just can't put all of our energy into one piece of this identity, because this identity will change. I can encourage them to just keep discovering who they are. And as you said, 18 to 25, huge developmental years. That's where they are. There's so much time for their brains to develop and for them to learn who they are. So really encouraging that self-exploration, to have a greater sense of self, to have a greater sense of purpose. Again, those are all protective factors for mental health disorders. We know when young people have a sense of purpose, have a sense of community, have a sense of self, that's protection for the development of mental illness. So, through athletics, we can really help them develop these protective factors. Part of being an athlete, but also part of life outside of being an athlete. So I would really encourage that. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Try doing new things.
Yep.
This is not easy.
No, especially with the pressure our athletes are facing. I mean, how many athletes feel this pressure at a young age to be a single sport athlete? Like, I have to be only playing basketball every season. I have to stop playing soccer, and I have to stop playing softball. I only have to play basketball because that's my sport. But what do we know? That's more likely to have injury. We have more likely to have burnout. And there's a lot of benefit to multiple sport athletes. But even our young athletes are feeling this pressure. And then this goes back to mental health of how are we helping our athletes learn about emotions? How do we help them learn about coping skills? How do we learn? How are we teaching them? Are we talking about the mental health aspect of sports? These conversations are starting, but there definitely need to be more of them, in my opinion.
Yeah, they need to be developed.
Mm-hmm.
This is what you are doing is like it's a new, in my opinion, it's a new concept. It didn't exist when I was in college, which was a long time ago, and really it didn't exist in college as far as like in the last up until like the last 10 years when health was really starting to get looked at.
Yeah. Well, the way that my whole this all started was, I was an athlete, then I was a coach, and all of my athletes kept coming to talk to me about their stuff, I call it. And I said, well, I think I'm doing the right thing, but I think I need to go back to school. So I went back to school to become a therapist. And then as I created my practice, seeing tons of athletes in my office. And then it was like, well, I'm seeing patterns of behaviors, right? I'm seeing former athletes developing depression, anxiety, eating disorder, substance abuse, eating, whatever it was. And I think, why are we waiting till our athletes are in distress to get the help that they need? Why are we not creating a prevention program, early intervention, starting these conversations sooner? And that's where I said, wait a second, that's what I'm going to do. And so I got together with some former athletes, younger former athletes, and I said, hey, let's develop this. What do you wish you would have known? And this is where my whole program came from of, why are we waiting till distress? Let's help arm our athletes at the high school level, the collegiate level, before they're in this level of distress, to say, what are the early warning signs of anxiety, depression, substance abuse, whatever it is, right? How do I identify those warning signs in myself? How do I identify those warning signs in my teammates? How do I talk to my teammates about this, right? If I'm worried about a teammate, what do I do? How do I start those conversations, right? How do I talk to my coach? We also do programming for coaches because our coaches are really trained in X's and O's. Our coaches are not getting trained in mental health, right? They're not getting trained in identifying those early warning signs, how to have those conversations, how to support their athletes, when to pass it on, right? I think our coaches know that if you're running a practice and an athlete trips and falls and kind of sprains their ankle a little bit, twists their ankles, you would say, okay, athlete, go sit down on the bench, maybe grab some ice, elevate your foot. We know what to do for that. We also know if that athlete trips and falls and, it's, the bone is sticking out and there's blood everywhere. Oh, call the trainer, call them 911. We have a procedure or a policy when our athletes are physically injured. Our coaches know what to do. But do we have policy, procedure, and a plan when our athletes are not well mentally? And the answer is we don't. Most places do not. And so our coaches don't know what to do. They're not feeling prepared, right? And so part of the coaching programs that we do are trainings for our coaches, again, how to identify and what to do and when to hand it off to somebody else. We want to look at mental health struggles, challenges, the same way we look at physical, right? We want to do prevention. We do that with our physical health. Are we doing that for our mental health? And we also want to have interventions when our athletes are struggling physically and also when they're struggling mentally. And so that's why I think it's like a holistic approach of not just talking to the athletes, but talking to the coaches. And then also we talk to parents, right? Parents, especially at the high school level, are an integral part of their children's athletic experience, right? I talk to parents all the time about the car ride home.
Yes.
Parents, maybe not talk about everything your child did wrong during that game. They're aware. Right? Let the child just decompress. Let them come to you to talk about the game. Parent, let the coach be the coach. You be the supportive parent. And so we do a lot of trainings for parents as well of how to support their child, their athlete's mental health as well. How to have conversations, same thing, warning signs, that car ride home, how to help your child when they're not getting playing time, when they've made the big mistake, how to emotionally support them in a way that's going to uplift your child versus squash the child.
Yes. If that incident on repeat.
Yes.
Start to go downhill and it flourishes into other mental health issues.
Absolutely. And like I said, I remember when I would I always tell a story that I was playing hockey. I remember if I got beat on a 2-on-1, I was a defenseman. I would look up into the stands and my dad would give me this like very disappointing look. And it was like, right. As a young athlete wanting my father's approval, of course, right? Sports were a big deal in my house and be like, and at the same time, if I broke up that 2-on-1 and made this great defensive play, I'd look up at the stands and my dad would be like, yeah, like cheering me on. And that's all I wanted was my father's approval. But again, when I got that disappointing look, it hurt so much. And so I think, we parents need to learn how to best support their kid, their athlete, their child in a way that's going to, again, help them learn like, okay, you made a mistake. What do we learn from it? How do we move forward?
Exactly.
That type of thing versus like, I'm disappointed in you or whatever it is.
And that's child cruelty.
Yeah.
One thing, do you notice a difference when the younger you start this process? Do you think it actually benefits to start the process as soon as possible?
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's definitely different conversations with collegiate athletes versus high school athletes. Yes. Sometimes high school athletes don't even know that they need this yet. I mean, when we present to high school teams, I definitely can see some kids, the wheels are turning, right? Or there's kids who are already struggling with their mental health and they get it. This past winter, we're working with a big school district here, and we're working with all of their teams. 8 teams a season, varsity teams. We're working with them, and I asked them. We always give a pre-survey out to kind of gauge what do they know, what do they need. And one of the questions I said, what do you wish parents or coaches knew about being a high school athlete? Ernest, every single response was how hard it is. It's hard to manage time. I'm stressed out. I'm doing the best that I can. Don't yell at me. I know when I've made the mistake. It's hard to balance. I mean, our athletes are telling us that they are overwhelmed, that they are stressed, that they're struggling to keep all the balls in the air at the high school level. Mm-hmm. So it's amazing when it's a free answer that they get to kind of write whatever they want. It's very much the same theme over and over and over again. And so our athletes, I say, like, wow, that felt really nice to be able to express it. I've never really thought about it. And so when I was able to express it in this survey, and now I'm learning about why it's so hard to juggle everything, why, and how to ask for help, and how to manage, manage all of this, and use different coping skills. Everything we do for our athletes is about skill-based learning, right? How are they going to walk out of our training programs with skills to use to help manage their mental health in a better way? So, and then when we work with college students, it's different in the sense like, oh yeah, we got this. Oh yeah, I'm struggling. They're much more open because I think they've seen more of the world. They've had more experiences. But a lot of times people will say, like, do you think high school male athletes buy in? I said, absolutely. I just worked with a high school hockey team this past winter, and they were the best team we've ever worked with. They were so engaged. They were phenomenal. And I said, yep, high school hockey players, yep, they buy in. High school basketball, yes, like it's not just females. Like I think we think about talking about emotions or whatever as like a female thing, but no, the male athletes, we create a safe space for this conversation, right? And I say to them, although I'm a therapist, this is not counseling, right? This is mental health. This is you can tie it into mental performance. It's about strengthening your mind the same way we strengthen our bodies for athletics. If we're not taking care of our thoughts and our emotions, we're not going to perform as well. So I think once we explain that to them, and I think also hearing those personal stories from young athletes helps them realize, like, oh, this is a real thing. I know this past summer, the Summer Olympics, there was tons of emphasis on mental health, anywhere from Simone Biles to Caleb Dressel, the swimmer, to all these different athletes were talking about it, which is fantastic. But I think every athlete deserves this kind of education, this kind of program. We don't just want to talk about it at the professional or Olympic level. Every athlete, again, when we start talking to athletes about physical health, we need to start to talk to them about mental health. Right? We want to normalize that conversation, break down that stigma to say, hey, we want to talk about when you lose that swim race and you're frustrated, what do you do? Yeah. When you get that upset belly, right, those pre-game jitters, nerves, what do we do? Yeah. And what's your body telling you?
It's a skill that needs to be learned. I figured out till I was an adult. Yep. And you always try to just kind of bottle it up.
Yep. And then what happens?
Then you end up blowing up, or you end up freezing up. Yep. Yeah. And the coping mechanism to learn how to deal with anxiety and performance anxiety is huge. That's a
100%. And just even basic things will work with athletes, like, anxiety and excitement feel very similar in your body. Mm-hmm. So if you get those pre-game butterflies, like, I'm excited to play. If we can reframe it as an excitement, your physiological body is going to respond differently and you're going to perform better. But anxiety tells us danger, danger, danger. It's like a false alarm going off in your head. So if your body feels like I'm in a scared state that something bad's going to happen to me, how do you think we're going to perform? Not as well. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Way more likely to get into 100%. It's kind of cool to think about, we often talk about some of these professional athletes that are advocates, thinking about JJ McCarthy, the football player, who talks a lot about meditation, right? There's, when he was at Michigan, there's all these images of him meditating before, games. Love that, right? Like, what a cool message, and talks about his own struggles with mental health. To say, like, here's, like, a great athlete, like, meditating, cool, right? LeBron James, huge advocate for breath work, for meditation and breathing. Mm-hmm. So I think we, sometimes that helps get some buy-in. I think when we talk about mental health, using real life examples at, like, these famous people, but also real people, for them to say, oh, this does matter. Mm-hmm. Getting that teenage buy-in. And then having them practice these skills. I mean, we start every program we do with different breathing exercises. I always say your breath is your most powerful tool.
Yes, it is.
Right? It's the most powerful tool on the field, but also in life. And so we teach them different, every time we meet, they learn different breathing skills, and then we have them practice it and report back. Hey, did it help you sleep? Did it help you with that pregame anxiety? Did it help you before that test? Having that hard conversation with your professor, how to use your breath. And so I think there's so much transition from skills learning on the field as an athlete that can transition off the field too. Right, big time. Resilience, teamwork, coping skills, all that stuff. So athletics, there's so many wonderful things too, like so many wonderful parts of it.
And I think it gives, just my opinion, sports gives the individual a head start on that.
Yeah,
Gives
absolutely.
a head start on that, especially if they're, if they have a support system,
Yep.
To actually deal with it. I've had several teammates who've had nervous breakdowns during the season.
Yeah.
Yeah, literally, they had to be hospitalized.
I bet. Yeah.
I had one teammate who we found he was wandering the supermarket at 3:00 in the morning, and found out he was manic.
Yep.
And you would never know. You would never know it until
He's there.
Yeah, until that happened. Yeah.
And we think about, we don't want that to happen. We want people to get the help they need sooner and understand, again, noticing within themselves that they're struggling, or noticing if their teammates or friends are struggling. And I think about what gets in the way, right? I think as athletes, there's this perception that we have to be strong. If we talk about, our emotions, we're weak. If we talk about struggle, we're weak. And it's like, no, you're human, right? And, I've heard lots of college athletes, I don't want to tell my coach because I'll lose my scholarship, right? I'll lose my starting position. They won't let me be the captain anymore if they know I'm struggling with mental health issues. And it's like, what? Like, you're a human who has struggles, right? Would we take a leadership opportunity away from an athlete who tears an ACL? No. Probably not, right? And no, we'd use, you can still be a leader with a torn ACL, and I'd say you can still be a leader with mental health struggles, right? And so to your point, how do we change the culture, the community, the conversation, so we don't have to wait till someone's having a nervous breakdown or, in some sort of psychotic break and have to be, be really, really in this level of distress, or heaven forbid, an athlete who takes their life. A few years ago, in a matter of, I want to say 6 weeks, we lost 4 collegiate athletes to suicide, right? Katie Meyer, there was a handful of athletes in a very short period of time. And everybody said, we didn't know. And part of me says, why didn't we know? Were we not looking? Because they're typically, we will see, there are signs typically that someone's struggling. So do they not know what to look for? And I'm not blaming anyone by any means, but we need more education to notice what's going on with our athletes when they are struggling, right? And so we can keep those eyes open and start those conversations earlier and get that, get support earlier on before they're in a total state of distress.
Yeah, they're in that spiral.
Yeah.
The earlier you catch it, the easier it is to do. But the time you don't catch it in time.
Exactly. And it's interesting, or something that I've just created in my company is, so obviously I'm a therapist. I do therapy with athletes, but we have a coaching program where I have former athletes trained as athletic wellness coaches, and they work with high school and college athletes almost like before they need to get to therapy. It's kind of like they need some mental health support, but their athletic coach can't do, isn't it? So where do they go? They come to us, and we work on things like your identity outside of your sport. We work on a mental and emotional agility. We work on sleep, nutrition, rest. We work on confidence and resilience. We work on failure and things as an even earlier intervention, one-on-one with our athletic wellness coaches. So maybe we can prevent that level of distress. Now, if the athlete's in distress, of course they come and work with me. That's what I do as a therapist. But it's a stepping stone, right, to have these conversations. And I always say an athletic wellness coach is kind of like a kind of a mentor. I kind of like a Sherpa, I call it, someone to walk beside you to help you carry your load. Versus a therapist where we might dig in more to deeper, deeper issues. Where this athletic wellness coaching program is really cool because it's like, hey, I'm an athlete and I know I'm struggling with managing my emotions. Hey, I'm an athlete. I know this pregame anxiety is really getting to me. But what do I do? Where do I go? And that's where our athletic wellness coaching program is really cool because it's this it's a stepping stone. And hopefully they can go through this like 6-module program with the athletic wellness coach. And hey, I now have tools. I now have support. I feel heard and seen. And like, okay, I don't need to continue to spiral or go down that path.
It sets the culture for the organization also. When people know that help is available, it actually makes I think it actually makes the team a lot more stronger.
Absolutely. And I think just when athletes can talk openly about their struggles too, to say, just let's normalize it. Break down that stigma.
Oh yeah, big time.
100%.
One of the things that talk about, athletes have a strong sense of discipline, teamwork. How have you applied those skills in your post-athletic career, whether it be in business, coaching, leadership, or personal growth?
I don't know if it's discipline, but I would say if I want something to go after it, right? So almost that like, I don't know what the word is, honestly, that this like, I see something, I want it, I'm going to work for it. So maybe it's discipline, maybe it's work ethic, maybe it's passion, all of the above mixed together. I don't really know what you want to call it, but I absolutely attribute that to my years as an athlete and saying even like, my company here, it's like this, I didn't grow up thinking I'm going to do this. This is just, again, I one thing led to another that led to another and said, I see this hole. I see people struggling. I see this need. Let's create something. Right. And that's where it's come from. And I think that, let's go after my dreams, go after my passions. And I think that absolutely comes from being an athlete and working hard. And also, honestly, learning how to fail. Right. I think athletics can teach us like, hey, I didn't win that one. And like, that's okay. Like, oh, I thought it was going to go in this direction, but it went in this direction. That's okay. Right. I think that's something, that resilience piece, I think too, can come from athletics, learning like, wasn't my day today, but tomorrow was a new day. I can start over, like, oh, that was a really bad shift. I can start over. And I think that is a wonderful thing from athletics that if we frame it in that way, that you are not your mistakes. Mistakes are something that happens. Mistakes aren't bad if you learn from them. And I think that absolutely has helped me kind of trust myself to kind of create different things, to kind of shift my career, to kind of trust my gut, trust myself, to do things in my own way. And again, is that discipline? Is that passion? Is that a little bit of crazy? I don't know what you want to call it, but I think it absolutely goes back to just all my years of being on a team and being in sports. Driven. Yeah, that's a good word. Yes.
Being driven, which is a huge benefit when you just have to just keep moving forward.
Yeah.
You have a goal and you're driven towards that goal.
Yep.
That's what keeps life together.
I agree. That's the drive. I think that's a great word. That exactly. I love that you just used that word. That's 100%. Because as an athlete, you do like, it's like, hey, we got to go out and train. I'm not feeling 100. Let me see what I can do. Oh wait, I can do more than I thought I could do today. Right? You show up for your teammates. You show up for yourself. You show up for your coaches, your program. That drive, 100%. Yeah.
You shared the moments where that athletic mindset gave you the edge. If you can go back and give your younger self the version of you that was training, competing, and striving to succeed in college athletics, what would you say? What advice would you give your younger self?
It's a really good question. I think a lot of it is, I don't know, I want to say reflect on what your strengths are, like know your limitations, but also know your strengths. Right. I think that, I'm a 5'2.25" athlete. I'm, short, I mean, but like I had to work with what I had. Right. And so recognizing, I might not be the fastest athlete, but I had maybe really good hands in lacrosse or something. I had other strengths. So I think like saying you're not going to be perfect at everything. You're not going to be the best at everything. And that is okay. I tell my younger self, find what you're good at and monopolize on that.
Exactly.
Don't focus so much on what you're not good at, because we're not going to be good at everything. So focus on your strengths and put the energy into that, because you'll actually be more successful and happier if you focus on what you're good at versus trying to be good at everything. On and off the field, honestly. I think that would be what I like to tell my younger self.
Oh, yeah. That's huge.
Mm-hmm.
What lessons do you wish you would have understood earlier about sports success in life after athletics?
Oh, I don't know what I would have. I mean, I think I just wish we'd had more conversations. I wish there would have been just more conversations about what sports can give for you. What's the reason, your why? Why do we play sports? That's a question I ask athletes all the time. What brings you to practice every day? What brings you to practice on the days you don't want to be there? I think I wish I would have had more of those holistic conversations as an athlete, about not just about winning, but just more about the why. What brings us here, and more of the, again, like holistic community, like human approach to athletics, not just the wins, not just about being the best, but like all the things sports are going to give you. And so also knowing, again, that it's not like winning is not everything. Being the best is not everything. It's about all the other aspects of athletics that are, I think, really the gift. The winning is just a small, small, small piece of it. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Always the result that you want, but you have
Mm-hmm.
to fall in love with the process, which gives you the tools to actually,
Yep.
be productive.
And isn't that such a beautiful life lesson, right? Like, what do we work, like, what is the destination? Where are we all going? There isn't. It's the, not to sound cheesy, but it's that journey. It's the process. It's the daily stuff that really matters. It's the small stuff that really matters. It's not the win. It's not the championship. It's all the stuff that leads to that, if you even get there. And I think that's such a great life lesson too, of like, we don't always know where we're going, but we have to learn to trust ourselves. We have to learn to trust the process, and like just kind of believe that I'm going in the right direction.
Yeah, and that's a hard thing, because that is going into having faith.
Yeah. Yep. Yes, absolutely.
And that's why I think a lot of athletes gravitate towards religion, because it gives you a sense of peace of the unknown.
Yep.
It gives you a sense of understanding that you're not going to always have the result that you worked hard for, but you do have the understanding that I did my best, and I'll just move forward. I'll move forward, with the loss, or the issue of not winning. So,
if it's religion, faith, the universe, just something bigger than yourself. It's, honestly, Ernest, that's like a part of what we call spiritual wellness, right? And when we look at wellness, there's intellectual, there's social, there's emotional, there's physical, there's and spiritual is one of those. And that is like having a belief in something bigger than yourself. And that's a part of being well. And again, if it's religion, if it's faith, sometimes even just being out in nature can be, or even community service can be a part of spiritual wellness. And so I think too, like that's a huge part of this, like being whole and well as an athlete, like looking at all those components to make an athlete a whole person and a well person.
Yeah.
For sure. And if you have, that faith, that belief, that's religion of like, I have to just trust. Yep. Trust it all.
Trust is a hard thing to develop. So
Trusting yourself first and foremost. It's a process.
Time, and you have days where you won't trust yourself more like you'd have in the past, but it's a skill that I know you cover in your program.
Yep, absolutely. And I think about with athletes, like learning to trust themselves, of like understanding themselves as a whole human, of like, hey coach, like my sprained ankle isn't feeling great today. I need to sit this out. Or hey coach, my I'm really having some really spiraling, self-defeating thoughts. Like, I don't know if this makes sense for me today to prepare, like learning how to trust their gut, trust their intuition about what they need, and advocating for that. And that's actually a skill we work on in our coaching programs. That one-on-one coaching program is like self-advocacy, learning how to be assertive, learning how to ask for what you need. So many athletes I find tend to be people pleasers, right? They want to please their coaches, please their teammates, right? And I get that, but often that people pleasing can, there's some drawbacks too, right? There's things that can make us more not prioritizing ourselves, prioritizing others before we prioritize ourselves, that can put our health and wellness in jeopardy. And so I think helping athletes, just again, communication skills, advocacy skills, figuring out what they need and learning how to ask for that, and that they deserve it. They deserve to get their needs met. And learning how to communicate that. And that's, life skill that most people are not learning ever, or if not, maybe as an adult. So again, if athletes can learn this young, they say, like, this is what I need, and trusting themselves is a beautiful gift, I think, that we can give them.
It is, wow. I mean, because that really, that made a lot of sense. I got a lot of stories in my head.
Yeah. Tell, go.
So, I mean, I had a teammate of mine in college my freshman year. He actually committed suicide.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah. It was after our last game, our last regular season game. The same, like the next day.
Wow.
I wish that something could have been done to help, prevent that from happening, because that still kind of is in the back of my mind this day, because it's so much. There's so much need for this.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. And again, like, I think just sharing that story again, like, and even I can see how it affects you today, right? I can see the emotion on your face right now. Like, all these years later, it still hurts your heart to lose that teammate in that way. And thinking about, like, how do we prevent that, right? And I think a lot of it's just starting the conversations, talking about mental health the same way we talk about physical health, taking away any shame or stigma that's associated with it. Nobody wants, to be depressed. Nobody wants anxiety. Nobody wants substance use disorders, or even, like, no, it's not like, that's not fun, right? But it's coping. And again, I think it goes back, like, we have to teach these athletes younger and younger these coping skills, how to deal with big emotions, identify big emotions. And we got to just start it sooner, younger, and plant those seeds. And, sometimes, like I said, I've worked with some middle school age athletes, and some of them are like, they're not there yet, but you know what? If they take one thing from this program, that's all that matters. Are we planting the seeds? Because we never know when it's going to click. We never know when they're in high school or in college and they have a teammate that's struggling. They might look back at this program or look back at that skill or look back at that story and say, oh, now I know why we learned that. We don't always know when things are going to land. And so I always think, even if one athlete takes something from it, it's worth it. One parent, one coach, it's worth the effort. And again, this is brand new. It's not brand new, but we're not doing a ton of the conversations about this. So I think some people are resistant, right? I think some people like, wait, what do you mean? And so, explaining that your brain is just as important as your shoulders, your legs, your feet, your hips, your whatever as an athlete. And so we need to be taking care of the brain as much as we're taking care of those other physical parts of our body. And so I think it's how we talk about it, how we break down that stigma. And again, I think through storytelling, like you're sharing your story today, I think for the athletes I work with, they share their more current stories. Like, it's, oh, now I understand. Now I get what it feels like. And what can I do to support myself and support the people around me? Yeah. And so, yeah, so it's interesting. This is the book that you had mentioned, but it's a little pocket guide, but it's got activities in it. It's got personal stories in it. It's got information in it. A lot about the stuff that we talked about, right? A lot about the identity, coping with those big emotions, how to make mistakes, mindfulness for athletes. So, there's a highlight reel for each chapter that gives you the little, like, what's the takeaway. But there's activities, there's stories, there's information. So it's a great way just to kind of get things started. So this is out on Amazon. We just published it, so I'm super proud of it and excited. Again, let's just start these conversations. Like, just, let's just do it. And so I'm just so thankful for your time today, having me on. I'd love to continue this conversation. If, people listening want to reach out, check out my website, email me, call me, text me, whatever you need. I'm here to support, again, athletes, coaches, parents, from my own experience as an athlete, my experiences as a coach, and now my experiences as a therapist specializing in athletes.
Everything will be in the show notes. Do you want to verbally list your website and your contact?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. So my company is called D&G Wellness Consulting. So it's our website is www.dgwellnessconsulting.com. Our social media handle is DG Wellness Consulting. You can just Google my name, Danielle Vallas. I have a website for my private practice, daniellevallas.com. Buffalo Believes, that's my other wellness initiative about starting the conversation about mental health. We have sweatshirts that say "Check on your teammates." We have a new one coming out. It's in production right now. It's a Human Before Athletes. It's beautiful, embroidered right here. Human Before Athletes. Again, the whole idea. Ernest, I'll send you a sweatshirt. I'll make sure you get one. So I love these ideas of our athletes wearing these sweatshirts and t-shirts. They check on your teammates. Again, like starting the conversation. So if it's through apparel, as an athlete, as a coach, I love the apparel game, right? Who doesn't? And so again, that's through Buffalo Believes, www.buffalobelieves.com. As a Buffalonian, you gotta love our city. We are very, very proud up here in Buffalo. And the idea of Buffalo Believes, this idea of what you believe, what you tell yourself matters. It's that mental health piece. So if you tell the messages in your head, the stories you tell yourself really matter. And so, I call it Buffalo Believes because I always say we believe in Buffalo, we believe in you, we believe in people's wellness journeys, and we're all in this together.
Yes.
Every time we sell a sweatshirt or t-shirt, we make a donation to a community mental health resource. So different organizations in our community we donate money to. Again, it's a holistic approach. It's a community approach. And again, it's a team. We're all a team. We're in this together. And we're only as strong as the people around us.
Have you ever thought about creating a curriculum and a course for this?
Yeah, absolutely. Some of our programs, either our athletic wellness coaching program, it's a 6-module program that we have set up. Every athlete gets a manual with resources and things to do with their coach.
Mm-hmm.
And then also through D&G Wellness, like I said, we go in and work with individual teams, and that's a 4-module program. And we have a 3-module program for coaches. But I've toyed with the idea of an online program, so that might be the next thing to kind of come up with. But Ernest, if you have ideas, let's talk. I'm definitely you're working with athletes all the time. Tell me what do we need? What do people need out there? And I'm happy to use my area of experience and expertise to really spread as much awareness, much education, as much support as possible.
Oh yeah, you're going to be on as a guest again, so that's
good. Count me in
because I'm going to share this with all my previous guests, and I'm going to really promote this on my social media platforms.
Please do, absolutely.
Because it's a very important piece to the development of athletes.
100%.
Actually, making sure the transition is as smooth.
Yep.
As possible. So.
Yep. And again, I like what you just said, like the transition, even high school to college transition is a big transition, right? College to, if you're continuing your career, big transition, or college transitioning to life without it. So those transitions create a lot of upheaval. So again, I love that this is the focus of your podcast, of the work that you do. Let's help people, support them to each stage of life, because it's beautiful at each stage, but we need some support. We need some stories. We need some education. And again, we can't do it alone.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So
I'm not going to hold you anymore, Danielle.
That's okay.
This has been a great conversation.
Yeah.
And this is the GameReady podcast. All of the information will be in the show notes. Please check out Danielle's website, and please check out Amazon and take a look at her book and put in as many orders as you can, especially if you have a youth athlete that you're working with. It's an athlete's guide to mental health. It is
D&G Wellness. If you just even put my name in, it will come up. Danielle Vallas. So.
Yes, I'm going to share this as much as possible. I think
awesome.
It's a huge issue that can be kind of that can make things a lot easier, a lot simpler.
100%. Well, thank you so much for having me today. Thank you for the work that you're doing. I love your passion. I love your energy, and I would love to come back. So, I'm around. Let's stay in touch. Like I said, I'll get you a sweatshirt so you can rock it on one of your podcasts, and it'll be great.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome.
All right, everybody, this has been the GameReady podcast with Coach E. Allen. We're going to be signing off, and make somebody smile today.
Awesome. Take care, guys. Thanks so much. Have a great day.
That's a wrap for this episode of the GameReady podcast. Thank you for tuning in and being part of this journey with us. If you enjoyed this conversation, make sure to like this episode, share it with a friend, and hit that subscribe button so you never miss out on future stories and insights from former athletes who've lived it. We appreciate your support. Stay locked in, stay motivated, and always stay game ready. See you next time.